Britain's modern reach is confined to 14 small overseas territories scattered across the globe. To understand how this tiny island once dominated the world, you have to look at the peak of its historical scale. In 1921, the British Empire covered a quarter of the globe's landmass and ruled over nearly a third of the world's population. This global expansion began with the consolidation of the British Isles. England first secured rule over Wales and parts of Ireland, using the Ulster Plantation as a blueprint for organized, state-sponsored colonization. Scotland initially pursued its own colonies, but the Darien scheme in Panama ended in total disaster. The expedition lost nearly 20% of Scotland's national wealth to disease, starvation, and Spanish attacks. Financial collapse left Scotland with little choice but to merge with its southern neighbor. Under the Acts of Union in 1707, the two kingdoms became Great Britain. By absorbing its neighbors and uniting the island under one crown, Britain created the secure, centralized power base it needed to project its military across the oceans. Corporate joint stock companies drove the push into the Americas and the Caribbean. This early expansion relied heavily on the transatlantic slave trade, which provided the immense capital needed to fuel further growth. Frequent wars with France and Spain eventually left Britain in control of the North American eastern seaboard. Managing this vast territory was expensive, and Parliament attempted to recover those costs by taxing the American colonies without offering them political representation in London. In 1776, these tensions shattered the empire's control over the New World. Following an 8-year war, Britain was forced to recognize the independence of the United States. This defeat triggered a strategic pivot. Britain turned its focus toward Asia and the Pacific, charting new territories to replace the colonies it had lost. Explorers like Captain Cook soon mapped the Pacific, leading to the colonization of Australia as a penal settlement for British convicts who could no longer be sent to America. In Asia, the British East India Company used its own private armies to systematically conquer the Indian subcontinent, assuming control through force or by threatening local rulers. By 1858, India had become so economically vital that the British government dissolved the company and assumed direct rule, labeling the territory the jewel in the crown. To hold this new empire, Britain relied on total naval supremacy. The victory at Trafalgar in 1805 eliminated the threat of French invasion and gave the Royal Navy uncontested control of the oceans for over a century. This naval strength protected a global trade network. By controlling choke points like the Suez Canal, Britain dominated international commerce, taxing the goods of every nation that passed through its ports. The combination of an uncontested navy and ruthless trade monopolies allowed a single island to dictate the terms of global wealth. During the late 19th century scramble for Africa, Britain seized control of the eastern and southern continent, attempting to link its possessions through a Cape to Cairo railway. To manage these territories, Britain completed the All Red Line, an undersea telegraph network that allowed London to communicate directly with its overseas colonies for the first time. By 1902, the globe was hardwired to serve as a centralized economic engine, with London at its heart. The foundations of the empire were already under strain by 1914. Britain relied on over 2.5 million colonial troops to survive the First World War. 2 decades later, the massive debt incurred during the Second World War bankrupted the British state. With its treasury drained, Britain could no longer afford the military presence required to govern its overstretched colonies or suppress the growing tide of independence movements. Ultimately, systemic overextension ended the empire. It simply lacked the wealth to maintain its global footprint or counter the drive for self-governance across its territories. Decades of decolonization followed as territory after territory gained independence. This process culminated in 1997, when Britain formally handed Hong Kong back to China. Most of these nations remained connected to Britain through the Commonwealth, a voluntary political association of independent states. The empire's impact is still visible today in the global status of the English language and the shared legal and cultural systems found across 6 continents. In a final historical irony, the drive to reshape the globe ended up transforming Britain itself. Modern Britain has become a multicultural microcosm of the very empire it spent 4 centuries building.